Hey everyone, so in this video we are going to discuss some of the general anatomy of the urinary system as well as the histology, or the cells and tissues associated with it. And if we start off right here, we can see the large kidneys. They come in a pair, right? So these are that fist size kidney, bean shaped organ that is located retroperitoneal, meaning behind the peritoneum. So it's located behind the peritoneum of the abdominal cavity. So with that said, on the top you can see the adrenal glands that we discussed in the endocrine system. You can also see the renal, which again, renal, if you see that term, that refers to the kidneys or urinary system. So this is a kidney. So whenever you see that, we're discussing kidneys. So the renal veins and arteries, you can see how they attach directly to the kidneys. You can also see this structure here, the ureters. So ureters are going to connect directly from the kidney down to the urinary bladder, which is down here. These ureters are going to transport, and I'll even use yellow. Why not? It's going to transport the urine from the kidneys down to the bladder. Once the urine is collected in the bladder, it can then be removed through the urethra. So it'll exit the body from the urinary bladder down the urethra and exit the body. One of the major tissues that, if you took my class, Anatomy 1, something I mentioned to you guys when we were talking about our different tissues, is one of the epithelium tissues that kind of gets overlooked is transitional epithelium. And that's because it is extremely unique and it is primarily found inside the urinary bladder. The reason why it's so unique is because it can stretch. And as you can see from these pictures on the left hand side, this is what it looks like when you do not need to go to the bathroom, right? So these tissues can relax, but as the bladder fills up with urine, it'll begin to stretch like the one on the right. This is going to help us with sending signals to the brain to let the body know, hey, we have urine in here and maybe we should get rid of it. So with that said, it's also impermeable to urine, which is important. It allows the bladder to stretch, but also make sure that there is no leaking. So if I drew a little silly picture here at the upper left-hand corner, let's say this is the bladder. Inside the bladder, we have urine, right? So the bladder, the red part, is going to indicate that we have that transitional epithelium. And a couple of really important factors, as mentioned here, it's going to prevent the urine from leaving the walls of the bladder, but also make sure that water cannot enter, right? So if water enters, that's just going to make it expand even more, right? So the transitional epithelium has a couple of very important roles to make sure it's a very tight network that does not let the urine escape. Another important factor as we talk about the different tissues associated with the urinary system are those that come into play with the ureters. So again, the ureters, actually I'll go back real quick to show you the ureters. So the ureters are the tubes where urine can travel from the kidneys down to the bladder, right? So they could travel down. And with that said, those tubes are actually composed of three layers. We have the mucosal layer that is the innermost layer. As you can see, I'm outlining in red. So the mucosal layer keeps going around. We also have the muscularis layer and the adventitia layer. Right. So these layers should sound similar because we discussed this in previous units. But the point is, these layers are going to make sure that they have the epithelium that they need to make sure that they are aligned so that when the urine travels down it, it doesn't rub up against it and cause any damage. It has the muscular layers that are on the inside that are both longitudinal and circular, similar to the stomach, in that, or stomach and the esophagus, in that it allows for peristalsis to occur, meaning these ureters, these tubes, are going to be able to contract in order to help squeeze urine down the tube and into the bladder. So, yes, gravity is important, but at the same time, these muscular layers are going to help squeeze the urine down into the bladder. And then lastly, the adventitia layer, which is primarily going to be holding the blood vessels that supply the nutrients to the ureters, as well as lymphatic tissues and nerves. And here is a pilogram. This is going to show just all the different structures within the urinary system that we already discussed, specifically the flow of urine. If you have any questions at this point, please let me know.